Hi, I'm Scott Giles, and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnocoaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences generally. If you'd like to know more about my professional work, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Today, I want to talk about being either a slow or a quick study. That is, how easy is it for you to learn new things and master material that you're asked to learn? I think of myself as a slow study, always have been. When presented with new material that I want to learn, I realize that it's going to take me some time to move into that material. So I read and take notes. I lay out ideas on my computer screen or paper. Later, I go over them, looking for connections and ways to understand the material. This works for me, and once I've learned something, it tends to stay with me. Now, when I was in high school, I saw a lot of people who were quick studies. They probably did have a higher level of native intelligence than I did, and I can still recall how they would pass tests and laugh that I never study, they'd say. And they weren't lying. They didn't need to study. Their basic smarts were good enough that they could just listen in class and figure out the right answer without having to cram or burn midnight oil, pull all-nighters, or any of the stuff that I did to earn decent grades. And good for them. But when I got to college, I noticed that things began to change. I had 4 high school valedictorians in my freshman dorm. They were all quick studies and prided themselves on that. They'd attend class irregularly, skip the required reading, and were confident that they would be able to guess their way through the exams or bullshit their way through writing assignments. I didn't do that. Actually, what happened to me is I discovered that I enjoyed learning new things. I'd go to the library and do additional reading just because I became curious about the subject matter. And I even got interested in study productivity, tools I could use to help me be more productive as a scholar. So I studied touch typing, uh, being able to keyboard without having to look at the keys. I had no idea when I was back in college where we used typewriters that the keyboarding skill would turn out to be incredibly useful in the 21st century. I studied the art of memorization called mnemonics, and I learned shorthand, which I think kind of these days is sort of a lost craft. I also learned speed reading. Oh, I got teased. And I just say, well, I'm a slow learner or a slow study. I'm not sure that was really entirely accurate, but I simply was studying and began to enjoy the process of studying as something pleasurable in itself. On about midterms, I noticed something happening to my quick study dorm mates. They were getting scared. Now, some of them changed their habits. They attended classes, read the assignment, and so on, but others, used to effortless schooling, couldn't adapt. In fact, one guy on my freshman dorm floor got nailed for plagiarizing his term paper, which was on an easy subject that he could simply have written himself. It was asking for his opinion about something. He didn't even have to do research. By the end of the freshman year, All four of those valedictorians had dropped out of college. The problem? They never learned how to study. It had always come easy to them, and they never learned what they had to do to deal with difficult material. Now, it was interesting to reflect on that. I considered myself a slow study, meaning I expected studying to be work and that I would have to put effort in, but that's not really being slow if you think about it. That's simply studying. Whereas the quick studies who glided through high school had never developed the skill set to master difficult materials. Now, I was never my high school valedictorian, but I did the next best thing. I married someone who was. Lindsay, my wife of almost 40 years, was both a quick study in high school, in the sense that I've described, and someone who was bright enough to realize that that was not going to work in college. So she taught herself study skills and did well in higher education, as did I. As we've talked about this over the years, Lindsay pointed out to me, and I think it's really insightful, that there's a dark side to being a quick study, to just being naturally bright enough that a lot of basic learning comes easily. Someone doesn't have to work much in the early stages of education, and as a result, they don't master basic study skills. The dark side is that you get used to things coming easy. Then when you're confronted with subject matter that isn't going to come easily for anyone, you find you don't know how to break it down, take it apart, and figure it out. You never needed to be able to do that. And so there is a temptation to give up, cheat, or look for an easier, softer way. That probably is what I took away from that experience in college. I would formalize it by saying there were 3 lessons that I cull from my high school, college experiences and watching my college friends. First, in any area of endeavor, master the basics. Even if you think you can just wing it with an outcome that will be good enough, don't fall for that con. Master the basics anyway. Abraham Lincoln reportedly said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Well, sharpening the axe is what you do when you learn how to type, memorize, take material apart, and learn it in pieces. These are skills that stand a scholar in good stead. When I was an apprentice chef, I spent hours learning how to use a squeeze bottle. Believe it or not, they are ubiquitous in the culinary world. How to use a squeeze bottle to place precisely shaped and spaced drops of sauce as a garnish on a plate. The other apprentices laughed. "Just slap it down," they said. "It'll be good enough." And they were right, it was. But later in the training, when they hit things that required real precision, they didn't have the basic motor skills to be able to do that. There is no way to make a souffle that is merely good enough. You get it exactly right, or you have a pancake, not a souffle. Second, I realized that in a lot of things there isn't an easier, softer way to accomplish a goal. There are lots of things for which there are no shortcuts. One of the frustrations I encounter in my role as a certified instructor in the National Guild of Hypnotists is students who expect the class to be easy. They want to be entertained, not challenged. When you present them with material that's harder to understand, there is a percentage of students who just shut down. Well, then I just will not do that, they say. And then they're surprised when they don't have the skills to help their clients as they wanted to. It's the reason why I don't much enjoy teaching these days, although I am trying to focus on the students who obviously want to learn and who will tackle material with a will and just ignore the others. The final lesson that I call from this is to keep the mind challenged. I believe the human mind wants to keep growing and learning. To facilitate this, we need to avoid letting it stagnate. If we're not willing to reach for new learnings and have the skill and willpower to do that, even if it is hard, we will stagnate and we will soon lose our place or lose ourselves. I've met them, and so have you. People who retired and who haven't had a new thought in 15 years. They let their learning and their opinions stagnate, and each year they are less than they were. We know the brain requires challenge to stay healthy, as we're always losing brain cells to oxidation, but the brain will continue to grow new cells and develop new synaptic interconnections, but only if we keep it challenged with new ideas and endeavors. And I think that's the best way to be. And so I read books I disagree with. I listen to speakers I know I oppose. I experiment with new culinary tricks and flavors that my dinner guests may not always immediately enjoy, but I keep trying to master new things, including new martial arts skills. Learning is a pleasure. It keeps you strong. Be that kind of study. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And of course, if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through email, my website, or my Patreon channel. Stay well and stay safe.